Emily had always believed in kindness, even when life was tough. Working long hours as a waitress in a rundown diner, she barely made enough to cover rent, but that never stopped her from helping others when she could. That night, as the rain poured down and the streets were nearly empty, she hurried toward the diner, her coat barely keeping her warm. Inside, the place was quiet. The usual customers hunched over their meals. Then the door creaked open, and a man stepped in, disheveled, soaked, his hands trembling from the cold. His clothes were tattered, his beard unkempt, and his eyes carried a deep exhaustion. Emily barely had time to process the sight before her manager, Mr. Gordon, scoffed from behind the counter. "We don't serve handouts. Get lost." The man hesitated, lowering his head, about to turn and leave when Emily's voice cut through the air. "Wait." She reached into her pocket, pulling out a few crumpled bills, her own money, and placed them on the counter. "Get him something warm," she said. The other employees exchanged amused glances, whispering among themselves, but Emily ignored them. She led the man to a booth and brought him a hot bowl of soup and fresh bread. He looked up at her, his eyes glistening. "Thank you," he whispered. "You're the first person who's been kind to me in a long time." Emily simply smiled and continued working, thinking nothing of it. The next day, the man was gone. Days passed, and he never returned. Life went on, but Emily's own struggles only grew heavier. That evening, as she cleared the last table, Mr. Gordon called her into the back. His expression was unreadable. "Emily, business is slow. I have to cut some hours. You're the newest employee, so I have to let you go." Her heart sank. "But, sir, I work double shifts. I never call in sick." That's life, kid. Clean out your locker." And just like that, she was jobless. Rent was due, bills were piling up, and she had no backup plan. Fighting back tears, she grabbed her things and walked out into the freezing night, the reality of her situation hitting her like a brick wall. Days turned into a week, and desperation set in. She applied everywhere, but no one was hiring. Just when she thought things couldn't get worse, her phone buzzed. An unknown number. Confused, she answered. "Emily, it's Mark from the diner. You need to come back. Now." Confusion swirled in her mind, but something in his voice made her uneasy. She hurried back to the diner, pushing through the doors, only to freeze in shock. There, standing in the middle of the diner, dressed in a crisp, expensive suit, was the homeless man. But he wasn't homeless anymore. His hair was neatly cut, his beard trimmed, and his presence radiated power and authority. Emily's heart pounded in her chest. The employees whispered, confusion and awe written all over their faces. Mr. Gordon stood frozen behind the counter, pale as a ghost. The man looked around, his gaze sharp, before turning to Mr. Gordon. "I just bought this diner," he said. Emily's breath hitched. Mr. Gordon's mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. What?" he stammered. The man's expression was unreadable. "You heard me," he said. "This place belongs to me now." Silence hung heavy in the air, the weight of the moment pressing down on everyone. Emily couldn't move, couldn't speak. What was happening? Why would a homeless man, no, a man who clearly wasn't homeless, buy a small, struggling diner? And more importantly, what did this mean for her? Emily's mind was spinning. The man she had fed just days ago was now standing in front of her, not as a beggar, but as the owner of the diner she had been fired from. The silence in the room was suffocating. Mr. Gordon, usually smug and full of arrogance, looked like he had seen a ghost. The man's piercing eyes locked onto him. "You fired the best employee in this place," he said calmly. "But don't worry, you won't be making those decisions anymore." The blood drained from Mr. Gordon's face. "Wait," "What are you saying?" he stammered. The man smiled, though there was no warmth in it. "You're fired." The room gasped. Mr. Gordon stumbled back. "You can't do that. I built this place." The man raised an eyebrow. "And yet, you threw away the one person who made this place worth saving." Emily was still frozen in place, struggling to understand. Finally, she found her voice. "I don't understand. Who are you?" The man turned to her, and for the first time, his expression softened. "My name is Richard Sterling," he said, "and I'm not just the owner of this diner. I own an entire restaurant chain." The words barely registered in Emily's mind. A restaurant chain? But just days ago, he had been sleeping on the streets. Hadn't he? As if reading her thoughts, Richard gave a small smile. "I was never homeless, Emily," he admitted. "I was conducting an experiment. I wanted to see how people treated those in need when they thought no one was watching." He let out a breath. "You were the only one who showed me kindness. You gave me food with your own money, even when you had so little yourself. And that is why I'm here today." Emily's heart pounded. I don't know what to say." Richard reached into his pocket and pulled out an envelope. "Say yes," he said simply, handing it to her. With shaky hands, she opened it, her breath catching when she saw the contents. A job offer, but not just any job. A manager position. Richard smiled. "I need people like you running my businesses. If you accept, this could change your life." Tears welled in Emily's eyes. Just days ago, she had been struggling to survive. Now, she was being offered an opportunity beyond her wildest dreams. She looked up at Richard, still unable to believe it. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, I'll do it." A slow clap echoed from the back of the diner. Employees who had once laughed at her were now staring in awe. Mr. Gordon, defeated, stormed out without another word. Emily's world had changed in an instant, all because of a single act of kindness. Narrator. Emily's story is proof that one small act of kindness can change everything. You never know who's watching. You never know when life will reward you for simply doing the right thing. Would you have helped the homeless man? Let us know in the comments. And don't forget, like this video, subscribe, and share for more incredible stories like this one.